one of the things that I wanted to talk today about is motivation. Motivation on the path. When we first begin to enter onto the path, we're a little bit like the two young puppies I just got. We're sort of in every direction. Our minds are wild and everything is new and unusual, and we don't know where to go to the bathroom, and don't know whether we can get in or not, and haven't learned to use the dog door. No, wait, that's going a little too far, but you know, it's kind of like that. And when we're on the path, when we first get onto the path, it's very exciting, kind of like a new relationship or a new marriage or a new car or something like that. And as some of us know, later on it gets to be, well, the honeymoon is over, and you figured out where the bathroom is and what's for dinner, and again, using the dog analogy, how to manage in the pack, but it's begun to lose some of its initial fascination. We all have that from time to time, and the reason for it is always the same. I'm constantly asked, what is the reason for this? And nobody likes the answer, and so we go away and remain the same. But really, the answer is motivation. Why we are on the path, why we engaged in the path in the first place. Many people engage in the path not even knowing why. Like this fine fellow. He came here not having a clue. But it was like, hooked immediately. And why was that? Because he has the karma and habit of being a Buddhist. And, you know, when you came to me and asked me what was this all about, you know, and how would you continue and become a stronger practitioner, it's the dullest answer in the world, because that's what you do. You've been doing this for a while, and it's time to take your next step. So when we hear something like that, we go, oh, gee, that's less fun than I thought it was going to be. I was hoping I would find out I was the incarnation of, I was hoping for Nefertiti. In fact, I have been recognized as Nefertiti by several psychics. But I actually think I was Estee Lauder. So it's like that. At first we want to, we want to feel real excited about it. We want to keep the energy up, and we do it in our habitual ways, where it's all about me, 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 me. All about how I feel on the path and how others treat me when I'm on the path and how I'm seen by others on the path. And so, enough about me. How do you feel about me? That kind of thing. We like to wear the clothes and to single ourselves out, and our motivation is generally mixed. Even though we try to give rise to the best motivation, it's almost always mixed until, let's face it, guys, until you get to the higher boomies, it's mixed, period. End of story. No exceptions. So that's how it is. And where we tend to lose our way is because, as I've taught you, self-absorption does not lead to any sort of happiness. None whatsoever. And if we remain self-absorbed on the path, and it becomes about our look and our posture and our this and our that, and my practice is higher than yours, and so yours is lower than mine, and that kind of thing, well, on the path, we lose our way. Motivation is completely shot, completely wrong, and we don't know it yet. And so periodically we come toddling out of our little world and say, when will we get enlightened? Well, when we develop some bodhicitta and some motivation. And that hasn't changed either. That's across the board. I'll say this to one person and another person and another person, and then I'm not appreciated very much. Oh, sad me. I'm not appreciated very much because I gave you advice you didn't want to hear. You wanted the fun stuff, like next week. Yeah, it's going to happen next week. And if you believe that, I've got a bridge for you. So it's okay to laugh. It's not. So, so we go around in this conundrum, and when we remain in self-absorption, our world becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. Our minds become tighter and tighter and tighter, and more inflamed. The reason being that if it's about me, then I am separate from you. And I'm always going to be reacting towards you with hope, fear, or indifference. It's like hope is one side of the coin, fear is the other side of the coin, and indifference is the little thickness in the middle. You know, like in a quarter, you see the thickness around the sides. But that's it. That's the main reaction when you're self-absorbed. Because I hope you will make me feel better. I hope you will love me, you see. I hope you will appreciate me and show me that you appreciate me. And I'm fearful that you may tell me something bad about myself, or that you will make me feel bad, or wrinkle my little fabric of reality, or, you know, change me in some way, oh, heaven forbid. You know, inconvenience me in some way. And so when we are on the path and our motivation is askew and we're still so self-absorbed, we even react to the three precious jewels that way, and to our teachers that way, with hope and fear. And so, like for instance, when the teacher goes out in public, we do the little Hoover mode. We go into suck up mode, and we're very, you know, like this, and we're very bowed. Inside we're like, yeah, I'm going to get some time with the teacher. But you know, it's very bowed. It's very much like that, and very submissive. But again, what is the motivation? If the motivation was good, and you were to go to the teacher and say, I'd really like to help. I don't really know what to do, but I'd really like to help. I have some energy, I have two hands, I have a heart, I have some eyeballs at work, got a couple of muscles, not many, but a couple. And so, you know, if that kind of motivation was behind meeting one's teacher, or saying, you know, please grant me your blessing, and you bow down like that, you don't have to scurry up to the teacher and make a big deal. You know what I'm saying? You can satisfy the pure motivation through pure inner activity. It's when it's about you and being self-absorbed and generally an approval junkie. Because people that are self-absorbed are generally hooked on approval. It's the drug of choice. And so when we come to the teacher and we have to make a big to-do of some sort, you know, get some kind, we solicit response. So when you approach the teacher, when you approach the temple, when you approach anything that resembles or is part of the three precious jewels, always look at your motivation first. Because one can receive the blessing of the precious guru, one can receive all the benefit of the Dharma without it being externally apparent. You know, without the big kowtow and show and tell kind of thing. But we examine within our minds, well, I'm here and I know why I'm here, and I'm here, you know, every day. I appreciate that this is the home of the three precious jewels, therefore the body of the Lama, that one of the two precious jewels, the Sangha, abides here in spirit, and the Dharma is here. Look at all that Dharma. Look at all the objects of refuge that we see, different images of the potent qualities and activities of the Buddha. I mean, they look like tankas, but really they are sort of contrivances in a way to help us focus on qualities and activities of the Buddha. So these are all objects of refuge. And hopefully, when we first get into the bowing and scraping part, which is culturally new, and so we do get into it, you know, it's kind of cool. It's what guys overseas do. And even if we've never traveled, we can act like them. So once we get into that kind of situation in the beginning, that's cool. But if we don't cross the bridge into learning that it's inside, that the posture, the true posture, is inward, then we never really change. And if when we see the teacher, we're so self-absorbed that we're looking for approval and we want to have the right kind of bow and the right kind of clothes and holding our mala in the right position and making sure there are so many tags on it that surely everyone can see how much mantra you do. See that? Check that out. Huh? See that? First time I saw 4 of these puppies on somebody, I thought, wow, they're into the hundreds of thousands. And that's wonderful. So we have that kind of idea, but you can see that it's an extension of one's own ego. Eventually, though, we begin to understand that Dharma is serious business. And we begin to understand that our minds are like bees in a jar, constantly buzzing, constantly going around, never settle down, always kind of wild and crazy. And we begin to understand that if indeed we focus on the Lama as the outward display of the 3 precious jewels, and we focus on the jewels themselves to understand and contemplate their meaning and why they are so precious. Because, for instance, in the world, there is no way to awaken from worldly events. There is no way to awaken from the narcotic dream state of our ordinary experience except by the blessing of the 3 precious jewels and by using the Dharma. And so the Dharma is geared to help us see through the world of delusion and to help us awaken. And we don't like build a Buddha inside, or we don't build a Buddha outside. The Buddha nature simply is the primordial natural state that is our nature. And it's inherently empty and yet spontaneously complete. This is where the eyes cross. And the reason why we don't have the understanding and we don't properly take refuge and we are confused in our minds is once again back to motivation. It will never be enough to satisfy your ego. It will never make you happy. It will never awaken your true nature. It is not a good or even efficient way to plan for your next rebirth at all. If you're building altars before your own personal ego, and it dies completely at the time of death, and you haven't banked on anything else, then what? What happens next time? You gotta wonder. And one of the things that Buddhists do extremely well is we practice in order to achieve an auspicious rebirth, because we understand that life is just not one experience. We understand that there is experience after experience after experience in something like a chain of bubbles. Life after life, bardo after bardo. And we keep tumbling through this until we awaken. And so, if we are so self-centered in this lifetime that we can't get out of that habit, no matter what we seem to be practicing or wearing, or what beads we're carrying or whatever, if we can't get out of that habit in this lifetime, we've lost it. We've gone to a continent full of precious jewels and come back empty-handed. That's the traditional teaching in the book. So maybe we've gathered some worldly things. We have a nice education, we have a nice house, we have a nice car, we have a nice circle of friends. Don't you love that? Our neat little circles of friends. And we have all those things, and they're all worldly, and we lose them at the end of our lives. We spend so much time engaging, so much time trying to fulfill that temporary part of us that we simply do not understand. That there's more to it than that. And so we're kind of like badly dressed Americans playing church. I'm sorry. and it's the path. Do you understand that path is a verb? It's a commitment. It's what you do. It's not an object that you flaunt in front of others. It's not a thing that makes you feel holier than somebody else. It's a way of life. And it takes contemplation, self-honesty, and I don't care where you are, if you're practicing Salung or Trekchot or Togyal or if you're just simply watching your breath. Whatever it is, there needs to be self-honesty. Number one, self-honesty. How am I practicing? What is my motivation? What's really going on here? A friend of mine recently said sometimes it behooves us to step back and say, what is this and what am I? Just so we don't get lost in the jar, like the crazy bees we are. So what is the motivation? Well, the motivation to practice Dharma, there are different levels of practicing Dharma. There is the Theravadan point of view, the Mahayana point of view, and the Vajrayana point of view. And it's like a wedding cake. The whole cake is Dharma. And if you look at a Theravadan or a Mahayana practitioner, you say, I'm Vajrayana. Well, I beg to differ. Because you have no view. And if you have no view, you are not practicing Vajrayana. And you obviously have no motivation. Because of the motivation from the Mahayana point of view on, and even implied in the Theravadan point of view, implied. But from the Mahayana point of view to through the Vajrayana point of view, it is explicit. Our motivation for every single thing we do should be the bodhicitta, the great compassion, benefiting others. Giving rise to the bodhicitta is the first stage of actual awakening and actual enlightenment. No let me just say this 3-4 times. No bodhicitta, no enlightenment. Got that? You want to work that with me? No bodhicitta, no enlightenment. Once more. No bodhicitta, no enlightenment. So don't ask. Instead, look for opportunities around you. When the motivation is not pure, we can't connect any dots. We lose our way because we don't know why we're doing this. If it's lost its original thrill, and we're a little sick of maroon, we can't figure it out. When's it coming? When's the payoff? That's the idea. And when we ask questions like that, we know that our motivation is wrong. It's wrong, 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 wrong. Because the motivation has to be the great way of compassion. That is the very basis of the path. The path has 2 legs or 2 eyes, however you want to put it. Compassion and the understanding of emptiness. You can put it in different ways, wisdom and bodhicitta. Or wisdom and bodhicitta. So, however you want to phrase it, you're stuck. You have to examine yourself and give rise to bodhicitta. Excuse me from the throne, but you have to give a shit. And that's the truth. You can't stay in your comfy little way, stay in your comfy little group, and never open your eyes and hope to awaken. It will simply never happen. And then after there is no progress on the path if we do not give rise to the bodhicitta and we've forgotten our motivation. We get to a place of stagnation where there's no progress anymore. That only lasts about a millisecond, because after that you start going backwards. On the path there are so many opportunities. Why? It's nobody's fault but your own. You prayed for them. You wouldn't be here on the path if you hadn't asked for this. You prayed for it and you built upon it for many lifetimes. And so there will always be opportunities to engage in front of you. There will always be ways for you to give rise to the bodhicitta and to understand cause and effect. To understand that if your mind is loving and kind, you will be happier. Excuse me, I'm just getting over the never-ending cold that's been running through here. But when you give rise to the bodhicitta, there is a dynamic feeling of moving forward. There is a sense of cause and effect. There's a sense of wholeness and wholesomeness. Like, I understand, I have a place in this world. I wish to benefit sentient beings. A sense of not individual self-absorption and individual pride, but a sense of inner confidence and worthiness begins to come about. The feeling of self-worth is not a bad thing. It's that feeling of pridefulness and competition where you need to get on top of somebody else in order to feel good about yourself. That's the problem. When we start sliding backwards on the path, one of the first things we do is begin to destroy our environment. Our inner environment by not practicing properly and letting non-virtuous habits and thoughts creep in, slowly begin to take over. In other words, we give up training our minds, and that's what we're here for. We're here to train our minds. So we pollute our inner environment by letting our minds be just as wild as monkeys. Nothing against monkeys. And while our minds are wild like that, we're basically crapping all over the place. Our motivation is not sincere. Our thoughts are not sincere. And it's very hard to have any kind of common sense. But it's hard to put one foot in front of the other if you have no motivation and don't know where you're going or why. And so you pollute your inner environment. And then you begin to pollute your community when you're sliding backwards. That pollution is called gossip. In a spiritual community, gossip is death. It is death for the person that lets it come out of their mouths, and it is death for the person that lets it come into their ears. Do you understand what I'm saying? You are doing harm to the Sangha. You are doing harm to your own robes. You are doing harm. Let there be no mistake about it. So again, go back to motivation. If you have stagnated in your path, and in fact you're starting to show some bad qualities, and your mind's getting confused, and you're going backwards, and then you find yourself gossiping, examine yourself. Why? A lot of times people gossip because they are insecure. And again, they haven't managed their habits. And that's just the sorriest thing to have to teach on this path. I hate to tell you, but it's up to you to manage your habits. It's up to you. No one else can do it. So, if we are not managing our habits and we decay and we go backwards, we don't feel good about ourselves. And the way to get on top of that without self-honesty is to climb on top of somebody else. You won't be looking at me when I tell you about that person. You see? If I keep the discussion going and I dance fast enough, no one will notice what a rotten practitioner I am. So it kind of goes like that. It's human nature, but it's not the best part, and you don't need it. What do you need it for? You're nuns and monks and lay practitioners. Why engage in something so destructive? We wonder why most of the world seems to be at war right now. We wonder why moral codes are disintegrating before our eyes. A whole country just fell. I mean, you think about Burma, used to love their ordained and follow their ordained, and they had happy lives, and now it's just gone. And it's a worldly failing. And what do you think was the beginning of it? Do you think that suddenly out of space, this group of bad-minded people got together and did bad-minded things? No, it started with one person who gets together with another person and another person and start using ego to poison their environment. So really, literally, the end of suffering is in you, and it's on you. Yeah, you. And if that doesn't make you sit down and have a good cry, I don't know what does. If we want to stop polluting our environment like bad dogs, then we have to get back with our motivation and really examine ourselves honestly and say, what is this? What is my practice? Am I doing it, first of all? Now, why am I doing it? Because I have to keep Samaya. That's not a good reason. And I confess there are days when I don't have time or I've made different choices and I do a quick Samaya practice. I don't like those days. I'm not happy those days. I don't consider it a good day, even if everything else went well. And it's because I know that 2 or 3 of those can make a string. A month of that, and you're done. You're in trouble. And then we say, oh, but in the summer, we can go to His Holiness and He'll make it all right again. He'll put us in retreat for a month, keep our minds busy, and when we come out of it, we're like little sweeties. Did anyone notice what happened last summer? His Holiness was very ill. If we think that our opportunity and our teachers are going to last forever, we have no sense at all. His Holiness is aging, and because of these degenerate times, many lamas are having terrible health issues. And it's because lamas in their nature, or bodhisattvas of any kind, make commitments that they have no choice over in this lifetime. If a lama can swallow a big negativity of some sort, they'll do it. If it kills them, so what? It's the bodhisattva vow that's been made a long time ago and lived lifetime after lifetime. The lamas know it's not all about one life. Lamas know that there are great big plans that are wrapped around bodhicitta, and they are strings of life. And so, losing 5 years here or a decade there, it doesn't matter. If it's part of the great plan. So, we have to ask ourselves what we're doing. I'm going to tell you a story. When I went to do pilgrimage, I went to Sopema, which is where Guru Rinpoche and Mandarava practiced together, and Mandarava's father tried to get her away from Guru Rinpoche, thinking he was some sort of scamp or something, or a magician, And so Sopema is a lake in the middle of which Guru Rinpoche and Mandarava practiced on a tiny, tiny tuft of an island that arose naturally and spontaneously for their practice. And they practiced together and were able to transmute the entire negative situation. But one part that's particularly interesting to me in the area of Sopema is the meditation cave of Mandarava. It's an amazing cave. It's just amazing. When you go into the first antechamber, there's a place where you can slide your hand and put your hand right in, and it's a totally perfect handprint with nails and everything of a woman's hand. It's like she grabbed the rock and held on when her father was trying to take her away from Guru Rinpoche. And that is, to me, a display of incredible devotion and a display of incredible sense of fervent regard, that the power of her devotion was so strong that her little hand actually went into the rock. And that's what being a Mahasiddha is all about, that kind of focus, motivation, bodhicitta, devotion. There's no magic in it. The very molecules of the air of the earth will part for that kind of power. And so I went into the cave, and when the Lama that lives there and stays in constant retreat, I wonder how he's doing. But anyway, when he was in there and he found out who I was, he said he would leave immediately and, give me the cave to myself. And I was so honored and so grateful for his kindness, because he was living there constantly, maintaining Mandarava's cave, and he felt a special connection with Mandarava. And the dear monk who remains in retreat while my haughty self just walks around doing anything, puppies and cats and birds, a little with the birds, fun stuff. When my haughty self does that, he remains humbly in retreat, remembering Mandarava, or even I forget. So it was amazing. He let me go in there, and I stayed in there, and I meditated by myself, and I had an amazing experience. I don't know if this is written in any of the books about Mandarava, maybe some that haven't been translated, but I know this experience to be valid. Began to meditate, and the first meditation was, I became overwhelmed with a feeling of, I really want to meditate on her great compassion. I want to see and taste the great compassion that they were, Mandarava and Guru Rinpoche, as one. The compassion so powerful that it began a great series of events, as you know, that led us to be able to practice now. Amaho to that. So I sat there in meditation, and something hit me like a wave. I mean, it was a wave. I prayed for Mandarava and Guru Rinpoche to come now and mix their mind streams with my ordinary perception. And I felt as though a bell came on top of me, just sat on top of me. And then I realized that it was Lord Buddha Amitayus. And then and I don't usually tell these kinds of stories, but it's been so many years ago, it's time. I'm getting old. So I felt this great bell, and I felt engulfed in this precious mind stream. And then suddenly I just started to cry. Like, did you ever have the kind of crying where you hold your stomach and you just think you're going to fall apart? It's like almost a convulsion. And I had like a convulsion of sorrow, because I could see the suffering of the world. From her point, I saw what she saw. It was like a gray diamond cut into all these different facets. Let me backtrack a little bit. I could see the world she could see the world in sections. And she saw from her place way back then, she saw the world wars. She saw the suffering of animals. She saw the suffering, the decay of Dharma in the future. She saw the suffering of the Jews, concentration camps. She saw so much suffering, and as that mind stream came to me and I saw what she saw, I also saw that she began to rake her face with her nails, because the pain of raking her face was easier to bear than the terrible suffering of seeing the horror that sentient beings will endure throughout time. She began to tear pieces of her hair out and rake her face, and just with pain. And then she sat up and she just pulled herself together, and she made a wishing prayer. Let me be wherever I am needed, no matter what the suffering, no matter what the price. Let me go to these places if I can only be a doorstop to keep the darkness at bay. If I can be in some form that satisfies the needs of others. If I can come as a bridge or an animal or food or drink. If I can, whatever. I mean, if I were to come as a person with handicaps, if that would be anything, I'll do, she was in that state of just begging. I'll do anything, just don't let this be true. And from her heart came a figure like a diamond of light. The diamond was cut into many facets, the way diamonds are. Each one of those facets became her emanation. And I could see that I myself was only one of them. But I saw her cast her compassion out through time and space in order to appear at the best times to suit the needs of sentient beings. Even though she could see in her meditation the price that she herself would have to pay. But because her practice was so filled with the motivation of bodhicitta, and she was so real in her understanding, she felt like that didn't matter. And that even cutting one's face and pulling out one's hair was easier than bearing that. And I don't think there were any times in her life where she later failed in that aspiration. I know that at that moment the deed was done. In essence, my birth became inevitable. Any other emanation that she gave at that time were all emanations of her compassion, and they all became inevitable. No matter what the conditions were, she would arise. She would arise. And it was because of love, because of bodhicitta, because of a true understanding of what the suffering of sentient beings really is. Even in the simpler times, she could see that people will be hard-working people. I mean, like Americans tend to be hard-working people. We have full-time jobs, we work really hard. But what are we working hard for? She could see the waste of life after life after life, not accomplishing any Dharma, not giving rise to any bodhicitta. And in her mind, that was as painful to see as any world war. But she actually saw, and she was just a young girl, she actually saw the full content of the wars, bodies piled up in Auschwitz and, things like that. She saw it all. And gave rise to immense compassion that resulted in some emanations that I can only hope will succeed in doing some good for the sake of sentient beings. And so that's how it works. Rather than becoming silent and apathetic and slipping backwards and kind of becoming muddled in our heads and forgetting. The tool that you use here is sharp like a knife to cut through these obscurations that make us so slothful and so selfish and so self-absorbed. And Dharma is the tool that does that through giving rise to compassion, the great bodhicitta. And through doing the practices as they are taught by our precious gurus. And so later, even when Guru Rinpoche left her, she did not stop. She built many temples, taught many beings, took many young consorts to practice with, and in those days that was not considered weird. It was considered a tremendous blessing and a way to pass on secret knowledge. And then in the end, she was rejoined with Guru Rinpoche. And so it sounds like an amazing story from long ago, but to me it's not like that, because I'm living the effect. And I'm seeing what she saw. And even though this great bodhisattva, and I'm calling her a great bodhisattva, was able to give rise to this spectacular, mind-blowing bodhicitta that changed the world in an instant and laid the potential for the world to continue to change. Even we who know this story and know about Guru Rinpoche and know about His holiness and how for the first 5 years of his time in India, his hands never stopped bleeding because he built that temple with his hands. And of course now his body is broken, tired, because he hasn't taken any care of himself. I'm not that unselfish. I take care of myself all the time. I have a long bath every day. You think about that. It's a real luxury. But what really is the real stinker here is that those of us that hear those stories and we see these living Buddhas, we look at His holiness and, oh, we're so devoted. But do we follow Him? Yeah, every summer. And in between, we're lost. You see what I'm saying? Hello? Yeah. So, how many living Buddhas have got to come through here? How many great bodhisattvas have got to offer their forever afters, whatever they may be? How many living examples will we see of great courage and great kindness before we ourselves feel motivated to crawl out of our little holes? If you have time to gossip, you are not doing enough for sentient beings. It's simply that stark. If you have time to be self-absorbed, you simply don't have the habit of benefiting sentient beings. When will that habit come? We already have gray hair. When's it going to come? The day before we die, it will not come. The day before I die, if you all are saying to me, oh, Jetsunma, you can leave us now, it will not help. And sometimes I wonder if even these Dharma talks even help. And to be honest, sometimes I worry that they don't. And so I try to find other methods, other ways, like, for instance, the music is a way to teach. Somebody that's never heard any Dharma, at least there's a connection. So for the future, there can be some benefit. Now, what about you? When are you going to stop getting crazier every day with self-absorption and start really giving rise to the bodhicitta? We want to come and get spiritual benefit from the temple. When things go bad, we ask the teacher, please pray for this. I have stacks of things I'm supposed to pray for. Just stacks of them. But we don't want to help the temple. We don't want to help run it. We don't want to help fund it. We don't care if this, if it's being held together by, what do you call that, green stuff? Moss or mold. It's being held together by mold. We don't care. As long as it stays long enough to meet our needs. When we feel lonely and we feel bad, we come to the temple. But we don't connect the dots that we are the temple. This is the home of the three precious jewels, and we are practitioners. And so there's this insanity that comes with knowing and not doing. It's insane. How can you not be crazy like that? So our minds get wild and our minds start spinning, and then we have to take medicine. And we do, because it's gotten to the point, and that's a terrible point, but it's gotten to the point where there's no habit of being purely motivated and wholesomely directed. Instead, the mind is just wild. I want to do this, I want to do that, I want this, I want that, blah, blah, blah. Go out here, be busy there, get in the car, go there, go there. What is that? When does the change come? When do you get your shoulder behind the wheel and say, let's do it? So everybody's got to pick their time. My time came a long time ago. I had my opportunity to choose or be crazy, and I chose. And there are sacrifices. You betcha. But you know what's worse? Living in samsara without a clue, suffering terribly and not knowing why, not knowing that there is no virtue in one's mind because you were raised by wolves or, by in our culture, people that don't know any better. We don't have any discrimination. Nothing. When do we take up instead the guidance and the blessings that are offered and go with it? So your mother didn't teach you to be kind. So what? I taught you. You have no excuse. So you don't have the habit of living a wholesome life, and you think, oh, it's going to take me such a long time to change. I have to do my thing. I'm young. I gotta spread my wings. I gotta plant my seeds, or what? I don't know. Whatever. I've heard it all. Yeah. Whatever. You just really have to ask yourself what it's all about. And there is meaning in a sacred life. Yeah, it's difficult. It can be difficult. But more difficult is simply hanging out in samsara, accomplishing zero, not knowing what your death is going to be like, not knowing if you're going to come back as an animal, or a hungry ghost, or a demon. Because your mind is so nasty, full of yuck. Not knowing if you're going to come back as a jealous God because you just have to be on top, or a long life God because you insist on doing nice things for nice reasons and being seen while you're doing it. Just a little off center, but off enough to get you in the wrong place. These are the different realms the Buddha has taught about. But in fact, there are myriads of universes. Universes that we can't see or perceive in any way because they coexist in the same time and place. And on every one of those universes, there are uncountable sentient beings who are suffering. I can't help them all. I may not have connections with all of them. You may have connections with some sentient beings that I don't have any connection with. But unfortunately, you're out to lunch. Office hours are not there. Now, nobody home. Nobody praying. Nobody cares. Are you getting ready to be a great bodhisattva as fast as you can so that when you meet these people, you'll be there for them? Mandarava made that choice so long ago. When are you going to make yours? There's no particular way to do that. You don't have to go to a cave. You've got the Dharma. It's just, it's crazy. We sit here worrying about ourselves and our ways and our lives and our self-absorption, and we miss the entire point. Like, for instance, how many stupas do we have across the street? Each one of them is a living Buddha. That is the cosmology of a stupa. To make prayers by going round and round the stupa with great devotion and considering that stupa to be one's root guru or the deity of long life or Lord Buddha Amitabha, or to consider it Shakyamuni Buddha, whatever you want to put in your mind, that is what that stupa is. It is a living Buddha. I created this place so that Americans will have a way to do pilgrimage, because this is a land without culture, without long roots, without deep roots, I should say. We're just really a couple of 100 years old, except for the Native American population who have deep spiritual roots. But we're a transplanted bunch and we have nothing. It's an empty culture. So I built all these stupas, and now you can't even find them. The land is so overgrown. Living Buddhas out there with no one to honor them, no one to care, no one to see them, no one to clean them, clean their bodies and offer them some food, some water. The simplest thing we haven't done. So, again, back to motivation. Is it about you, or is it about giving rise to the bodhicitta? In a way, it is about you. Of course, you have to make the decision. You have to get to that point. But you've got to stop thinking of yourself as this ego, this personality that manages, just lives one life and has nothing else to be accountable for. I mean, how can we bear, after all these years, to go by a dishonored stupa and not cry? How can we do that? It's amazing to me. It's amazing. I think it's because we have very little spiritual experience as a culture. And it's not deep. Ancient cultures, for instance, have roots in the land. They know the owners and protectors of the land on a deep mystical level. They have respect for the land. Like the Indian culture, Native American culture believes that the earth is their mother, and that they should respect the mother, and that they are tied to the mother irrevocably, and that how we treat our kind mother results in our own condition, that there is no disconnect. But see, as disconnected Americans, we can't remember that. We forget that prayer works because we haven't used it. Ani over here had a brain tumor. And it was in the front of her brain. Not a good place to have one. And so I was extremely worried about her. And in fact, I was away when I heard about her suffering, that she had had a seizure. And I went into such a rage. I was so angry at samsara. And I started pitching furniture. I mean, I was in a beach house. You don't pitch other people's furniture, but I did. Started pitching furniture. And I was screaming, no, you don't. You're not taking her. And who was I yelling at? Samsara. It was stupid. But then I pulled myself together and came home, and what did we do? We accumulated 5 million 7-line prayers. And she's perfect. Well, you know.
Not dead yet.
Not dead yet. But that's the power of prayer. And when the two Kempos, you know the two Nyingma Kempos, Kempo Polden Cherub and Kempo Sewan Norbu, right? Gyatso, yeah. I always get the two Sewans mixed up. When they came here and heard about that, and they're looking at the chart, and we're all marked up, we're almost up to 5 million. As a Sangha, we did this. There was so much love. If anyone remembers, there was so much love. We stayed up night after night after night and prayed together and took care of each other. And when he saw that, he said, my goodness, not only is she going to get, well, she's going to get enlightened. And this is an amazing thing. They never saw anybody do that. That's bodhicitta, right here in the moment. Without waiting. That's when you spin on your heels and say, no, I will not accept this suffering. You put up your hand and say, enough, and you get to work. So now we got countries going down, we got the world looking at more and more war. We're losing the middle class in this country. Pretty soon we're going to be eating Chinese McDonald's hamburgers. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. But it's pretty screwy right now. And so it's time, is really all I'm saying. I'm not going to complain and moan and whine about the world. It is what it is, and always will be. What matters is you. Your commitment, your posture, your dedication, and your prayers. I believe in prayer. I believe in praying for someone. I believe in accumulating mantra and dedicating it to their benefit. I believe in begging Guru Rinpoche for a blessing. I believe in completely putting aside one's pride in order to be of use. Just let it go. It's not serving. And I believe that one person can change themselves and can affect a group which can affect the world. I still believe that. No matter how bad it looks, I will always believe that. And I will always return whatever the conditions are. I believe in saving lives and dedicating the merit to the end of suffering. You should see the 2 little puppies I have, like I needed 2 more puppies. It's like I need more children, you know? Oy. So these 2 little puppies, I took one look in their eyes and I thought, you'd have been dead last week. What kind of person could euthanize 2 little puppies because it was just too difficult to adopt them out? You should see them. They're all loved. They know they've been rescued. Rescue animals always do. And yet we can't even open these stone hearts of ours. Just creak it open a little bit and love one being enough to save its life. We don't even want to do that. What can I say? You have to choose. You have to do your version of sitting in the cave, looking at the condition of the world, and making a choice. Whatever your version of that is, it's up to you. You want to end wars? Right here is where it starts. One person starts it. One person starts it. You want to end a war? Stop gossiping. That's a small war. They get bigger. We get reborn in the midst of them because we created the causes earlier. So everything we do matters. We really matter. Not in an ego way, but because we have found the path, we know the three precious jewels, and we realize that according to the Buddha's teaching, most importantly, there is an end to suffering. And that end of suffering is the precious bodhicitta, the great awakening. This is what we've been taught since time out of mind by all the living Buddhas who have ever been here that we haven't bothered to listen to. And it's not going to be any different. It's simply the way it is. It's we that need to change. There's no way to be on the path and expect that you won't have to change. That there won't be the challenge of getting new habits, new ideas, new ways of viewing or approaching oneself and the world. Yeah, there's an effort to it. But again, what's the alternative? I'm glad when I see practitioners practice. I'm gladder when they do it for the right reasons. I am happiest of all when I get to see my students change. I wish it made my students happier. Change scares them, but that's when I'm happiest, is watching you guys grow. I will say that I am so happy with some of my newer nuns, how they are hungry and reaching for it. I am really happy about that. And I will defend them to the best of my ability under any circumstances. And those practitioners, if you are fresh and new on the path, please heed my words. Work it from the beginning and work it every day, so you don't stagnate and slide backwards. And for those of you that have stagnated and slid backwards, wake up, the alarm's going off. Get yourself together, get your cave happening, and make a choice. Because death could come tomorrow. And if you haven't accumulated anything to prepare for your next life, what's the point? You might as well go to the movies, you know? So, I mean, that's just how it is. Some of the newer people, I can see it. They have something. They have some light in their eyes. And you'll hear on one of my songs, that's really what I want. If any of you have heard any of my songs. Well, I thank you for listening to me go on and on about this, and I thank you for listening to my story about Mandarava. You know, I think that her example is one that we should follow. Nothing could separate her from the three precious jewels. Not rocks, not distance, not suffering, not nothing. Nothing could dampen her determination to lessen the suffering of sentient beings, because she contemplated it and she got it. And in these degenerate times, we should all aspire to be that way. No holding back. No measuring this much, this much, this much. You know, I'll give you this much. But wholehearted determination to be a real practitioner and to return as a great bodhisattva or even a simple bodhisattva for the sake of sentient beings and to help end suffering. That's the reason. You wanna become a Kempo or, practice the highest teachings? Maho. But please, I beseech you, do it for the right reasons. Not because you can't find any place else to be a hotshot besides in the Dharma community. Do it for the right reasons. Do it for compassion.